Hello everyone, it's Brian, and welcome back to Twilight Struggle Play the Experts, the game where I play the experts and you watch me get my pants beat off. Now, it's been a few weeks since we got our proverbial pants beat off, but I have been playing some Twilight Struggle, and so a couple of quick updates before the game. First of all, I played in our little local tournament here in Baltimore at the beginning of November, and I came away the tournament champion, and I am just so proud of this little paper certificate I got commemorating my amazing tournament victory. But it was actually the first tournament victory that I've had in a tournament of Twilight Struggle, so that was fun. I've only played in a couple, including the one you watched me very publicly lose online a few months ago. But anyway, I finally brought home a piece of paper that says I'm a tournament champion, and I am just excited about that. Now, that brings me to your chance to become a tournament champion at Twilight Struggle, and to do so in a tournament where I am the game master. That's right, I am game mastering the Twilight Struggle tournament at the Winter Nationals in Charlottesville, Virginia. The date of the tournament itself is February the 24th, 2018 at 9 a.m. Now, if you're watching this and it's 2019 or something like that, well, come to go to www.prescon.com and come to the Winter Nationals, because I'm probably game mastering the thing those other years as well. You never know, or somebody will be if I am, dead or something. So come on out, because we had a great crowd last year. Bunch of people all playing Twilight Struggle. You could win this amazing wooden plaque for being the champion. There might even be a prize for second place. And last year, so I did actually play in addition to game mastering, and I got this amazing hand knocked me out of the tournament. Four, I tell you, scoring cards. And let me just say, they weren't quote-unquote good scoring cards either. So anyway, Twilight Struggle being what it is, you just take the cards you're dealt and come on out. The tournament, the whole convention runs February 19th to 25th in Charlottesville, but I am game mastering Twilight Struggle on February 24th. It goes all day. It's a big fat all day thing. And although you can get eliminated from the tournament, but it's got a mulligan round, so you're guaranteed 2 good, solid, minimum Twilight Struggle games against somebody who is also a tournament player. It's really, really fun. And then you get to watch, somebody play in the finals and see what they do. The guy that came in second last year, he was bidding 0 for the U.S. a lot of the time. Like he was bidding 0 for the Soviets because he really liked playing the U.S. and didn't feel like he needed the handicap, and he was just ripping and snorting, winning on turn 4 as the U.S. kind of stuff, just bending space and time as the U.S. plays. It's really interesting to see people come out of, different little schools of thought on how to play Twilight Struggle and watching them interact, and then in all but one case, meeting their match. So, coming out February 24th, and also the other days they have all sorts of other cool games too that you can also play. So, that brings us at last to what we're all here for, which is the next expert game of Twilight Struggle, and I have got a doozy for us today. I am playing Ziemowit, and Ziemowit is possibly the second most famous player in Twilight Struggle after Sanct, which doesn't mean he's he might be the best player, but anyway, he doesn't have a strategy named after him, but he is probably the highest rated proponent of what's often called the theory strategy, or the theory. And the funny thing is, theory sounds like a body of established thought, but in fact, theory is the name of a guy who wrote a website called twilightstrategy.com. It's still there, and it's got awesome stuff, lists of stuff about every card in the game, and it has a very positional based strategy about investing in your board position so that you can do great things as the game moves into its later phases. And I would say that was kind of the dominant strategy in the game for a long time, until the Sank strategy, or the Chinese strategy, appeared as a competitor and then became all hot and a big deal. But Ziemowit is one of the great masters who has continued to generally play a fairly positional game, and so we will get to have a look at how that goes. Now, of course, he's a master, so that means we may not see specific positional theory style moves, but we'll certainly look for them and think about them. It does mean I would be a little bit surprised if he went hardcore victory points greedy, pounding things into the space race left and right, kind of Chinese style. But we will have to see. Ziemowit, I believe, is from Poland, and I'm probably honestly mispronouncing his name, so everybody can please tell me. I did learn somewhat how to say Zugzwang or something like that. I know it's like a TS sound. We had someone help clarify an earlier. So let's play Ziemowit and see just how bad he can run circles around us. We will go in. So let's see. Deal up a hand. I am going to be the US this time. And let us see. So he has made his setup. He's done a fairly standard one. Oh, here's a quick look at his record. You can see he's got a perfectly awesome online record. I think he's mostly played on other sites before he got here, but he's still played hundreds of games on here. Just don't make the mistake of thinking those are the only 166 games he's ever played of Twilight Struggle, because we can be certain he's played many, many, many more on Wargame Room and some of those other this awesome app places to play. So now let us look at our hand situation here. And I have to say that this is going to be a challenging hand, because we're playing the US, and look at all those Soviet cards. Now, I don't think of having some Soviet cards as inherently a disadvantage for the US player, because, of course, it's sometimes really good to control the timing and or going to the space race of some of his best cards. So, for example, I'm certainly not happy to be holding Destalinization, which is one of his best cards. Ideally, I'll try to save that all the way to turn 3 and discard it after the reshuffle, so that it won't come back until at least turn 7, by which point Destalinization won't be a very important concept anymore. But the problem is we've got a whole pant load of his cards, and so that is going to make our life difficult, because although we can mitigate some of these cards by controlling their timing, it is going to mean we're not going to have very many operations. So let's look at some of them. Vietnam Revolt will probably be the last card I play this turn. So my goal will be to get into Thailand before it comes into effect, so that when he gets stuff in Vietnam, it doesn't give him Thailand. So that's a fairly routine way of disposing of that card, and so that card isn't going to cause us a lot of problems. Nuclear Testbed I'll come back to in a second. Fidel is not a totally bad card for the U.S. to hold early, because when I play it and play it for ops and give him 3 guys in Cuba, it means that so now he'll have influence in the Americas / Africa, which means the CIA card actually then becomes dangerous to him in his hand, because I would have a place to coup and force him to start a nuclear war if he played the CIA at DEFCON 2. So that one we're going to be playing for ops and going ahead and making, I would normally try to wait for DEFCON 2 to play it, but I'm getting the feeling that in this hand with all these horrible cards that I may not be able to do that, but we will see. Now, Korean War we have some options with. It's one of the 2 cards I might consider sending to space. The scenario in which I would send Korean War to space is if I want to play into Asia, I could use a different card to put influence into South Korea and then send Korean War to space. And I know it wouldn't be back for a while, and I'd have time to fill up Japan and maybe even Taiwan, so then the Korean War won't be too much of a danger by the time it comes back. So that, by the way, is a sort of Sanct-style way to play the card. The theory way to play Korean War would be to activate the event first, see if South Korea, explodes or not, and then probably use the influence to fill up South Korea. But it doesn't give us a try at the space race. It doesn't guarantee ending the turn with control of South Korea. So there's pluses and minuses of those ways. It does get Korean War out of the deck. UN intervention I might normally use for ops one of these horrifying events like socialist governments or destalinisation, and not have to have the event go off. The problem is that if I want to save destalinisation until turn 3, after the reshuffle, then I don't have enough cards to have a hold card and play UN for the event. So we'll have to see if things get really desperate, because you can see it's worth commenting, I don't have a lot of ops here, particularly when you consider that I'm in theory not playing destalinization, that if I play socialist governments, I might have to use some of it. If I'm going to just endure socialist governments, I'm going to probably have to put some of it into Europe back with it, as opposed to doing something I actually want to do. So if I get really desperate for operations, I'm going to have to play UN with destalinization and then just hope that destalinization doesn't come back too soon. But we'll have to wait and see on that, see how the turn goes. Again, socialist governments, I will probably just endure, although it is my alternate space race for Korean War, depending on if I suddenly think that we need to really be playing in Europe, depending on where I get the feeling that scoring cards are. I could go that way. I'd probably rather space Korean War and endure socialist governments, but it could go either way. And then finally, Nasser, well, he's awful in lots of ways, but we're almost certainly going to have to endure him, and we can't space him. And he would not be the candidate for UN intervention, because honestly, if he's going to happen, he might as well happen now. A, very much before Sadat, and B, giving us, if we play him, it actually sticks some influence into a battleground in the Middle East for the other player, and sometimes that could screw up his Middle Eastern strategy. So that brings us to, well, what are we going to headline in this, with this awful hand, but also how are we going to set up? So I don't see any reason not to do a fairly standard setup. We're going to put at least one, we're going to get our guy into Iran, and I'm going to go ahead and I think we need as much fortification in Europe as possible. I'm going to put the extra point into Italy because holding a low ops hand, and we're going to have to probably endure socialist governments. That is, we don't want to get everything squished too soon. So then we have to headline something. And there's two main candidates here. You might look at it and think there aren't really any candidates, and that is certainly a point of view for this hand. It is not brimming with headline choices. It is festering with mitigation. It is just a big fat mitigation of his events. So one thing that would be a sort of, hyper VP greedy thing that I sometimes do, I have actually done it on this series, is to headline nuclear test ban. And that is certainly would get us off to a nice head start on victory points because it would immediately give us 3 victory points. And I would do it if I had more than hardly any other ops. That's our only decent ops card because both of our 3 cards are semi-unplayable and everything else is a 2 card. And honestly, those are, kind of mostly unplayable to boot, and then a couple of 1s, and we're going to probably have to play both of the 1s for ops. Unless we go with the UN for the event side strategy. So the problem is, if I headline nuclear test ban, I'm giving up that's my one pure playable card that I could use to do a big counter coup in Iran or somewhere like that, or do some big important useful thing to spread out that we might need. It's sort of my only counterweight against totally being abused. Now, the bad news is it's also the one single card that produces a positive effect of any kind for us if we headline it. In fact, it's the only one that doesn't produce a negative effect. So there's nuclear test ban. And I really don't want to do it, though. I need to find something else. I want to find the minimum, least horrible thing and just endure something in headline so that I'm going to save that counterweight so that I hopefully don't get completely rolled over essentially in the first turn here. Because honestly, our op situation is pretty dire among these cards. We've got a little bit too much mitigation and a little bit too few playable ops. So I'm going to go ahead and unfortunately headline his event, and let's see what he is going to do. All right, Romanian abdication. All right, well, at least that's not a big, mighty, crushing Russian event. I could have imagined a lot worse. It means he doesn't have a great headline, so he's just popping his guys into there. And the fact that I control de-Stalinization is actually a good thing because, of course, those would be great fuel for de-Stalinization if it manages to happen before independent Reds. Maybe he's planning to space independent Reds, or he doesn't care. I'm not sure what's going, but it sounds like he didn't have at least he didn't have a lot of good events that he was willing to headline, and maybe risk a defector in theory. So he's done that, and then we have duck and cover. Okay, duck and cover for influence. All right, so what he's doing is he's playing my event at a time when it gives me the least number of victory points. So he has to give me a victory point, but he only gives me 1. And that card, would give me more victory points as the DEFCON degrades, and then of course it becomes unplayable for him at level 2. So that was a standard card mitigation, and he is, see, rather than taking a coup, this is a nice, a well played, a well thought out move. He is spreading out from Libya, from Egypt right away, so that even if I get a coup there, say his coup, if he had taken a coup in Iran and the coup failed, then I could be coupping him in Egypt, and he wouldn't, and then I might end up touching Libya, and he'd have to recoup me in Egypt, and so I'd be home free in Iran next to Pakistan, or he would have to coup me in Iran again, and then I would be free in Egypt and Libya more or less forever, and the Middle East would not look good for him. So those were some of my hopes in headlining Nasser, and he found a really good card to do that with, because he does that. He also has poked a little poker into Afghanistan that I have not failed to notice. So he is making a little move into Asia, and I think that is a more significant move than the one he's sort of made into Europe with the remaining abdication. But see, he did it with the card that dropped DEFCON to 4. So now there's sort of 2 battleground coups left instead of 3. So he doesn't take a coup, but he does not thereby give me 2 coups. If he had left the DEFCON 5 to do that, in other words, playing any other card for ops, then I would be able to in theory get 2 coups this turn in battlegrounds. Like I could have then immediately couped Egypt or Libya. Then if he couped me back, I could coup him back again, and he doesn't know yet that we don't have 2 good cooing him back cards. So this has meant there's 2 coups left, and so now, see, we're in that infamous, do you want to get the last coup or the second to last coup in the turn? So this was a very astute manipulation of both mitigating one of my cards, getting some influence spread from an opportunity that I was forced to give him in Egypt, and managing the DEFCON in a way that doesn't give me any special advantages. So well played, turn run, action round 1 for Mr. Opponent. And he has, made a funny comment about his wishes for my good luck. So what are we gonna do? I don't want to take the second to last coup, honestly speaking. So I'm going to place some influence, and I've got some places I would like to place influence. Let's use the Fidel card. Go ahead and get his ops over there into Cuba. Maybe that'll give him we'll hope he'll get him a CIA problem later, and maybe we'll realign him later. But we have first some bigger fish to fry. And because of his play into Afghanistan and my general lack of ops, I've decided to definitely go ahead and commit to the South Korea strategy. So we're going to play that in there and just try to wall him off from Asia domination here. Make sure, because I feel like we've got a good chance of getting a hold of a lot of these other Asian battlegrounds. We've got a really good chance of getting to Thailand. Before him, given that we control the Vietnam card, we'll almost certainly get Japan. So we're playing for a position in Asia here, and it's partially inspired by the fact that he snuck that little point into Afghanistan there, which makes me think he cares about Asia more than he cares about some other things. He did not, for instance, rush to immediately get domination in the Middle East, and so far he hasn't made any substantial move in Europe. All right, so here comes Comic-Con for a coup. Okay, so he's willing to have the second to last coup, and he has rolled a nice 5 for himself, taking over Iran. So that does mean that we get to use nuclear test ban as we wanted to, which is we get to take the last coup in the turn, and hopefully this will get us back into the Middle East. And given that he has filled Libya, so there's less point in going to Egypt, I want to coup Iran and get back next to Pakistan and Asia and all of that stuff. So here we go. Oh, and we have rolled a 1. We have rolled a 1. And that is not so good. Well, at least we have the guy in. Good thing we have the guy in Israel, or we would be in really bad shape. Well, them's the breaks. He got He got a good coup roll. We got a really bad one. We did what we were supposed to do. We saved a big card for our coup, but it didn't work out. Doesn't always work out. That is the nature of the 1 in 6 system. Is 1 in 6 die rolls will be a 1, and this apparently will be one of those times. It's always, you never really want your worst roll to be on your first coup because they're kind of important. Let's see what he does. He's going to take advantage, I'm sure, of what's happened. Okay, yes, he is now threatening not only a domination of the Middle East, but in fact an unmitigated domination that we wouldn't even have a presence. So we must now seriously, urgently get our thin little asses into the Middle East somewhere. And he feels guilty about his good luck, which he really shouldn't. But but he's right that our position is in fact very bad. But thems are the breaks in Twilight Struggle. And honestly, if we only had situations where we had good luck in this series, then we wouldn't really be learning. There would be not very good verisimilitude to how everyone else's games usually go, which is there's a lot of how do you deal with really bad things and turn them around? And, sometimes you can turn a bad thing around. It's, probably less likely against a 2102 rated opponent who is probably not going to make all that many mistakes. But this will nonetheless be a good set of exercises in what do you do when the Middle East is going all red? And the thing is here, the cards I could play, Vietnam Revolt would be a disaster because it would let him right into Thailand at a time that he's already apparently going to have completely unfettered access to Pakistan and India, et cetera, et cetera. Korean War, similarly a disaster, probably a disaster, or it would be 50-50 chance of a total disaster in Asia, an utter unmitigated disaster in Asia if he wins the Korean War. So, and of course that's our space shot card. So we're left with either burning the UN de-Stalinization thing and then being therefore faced with enduring socialist governments as our final card for blockade, prevention purposes, or maybe even having to discard it to blockade and having nothing left to play on the 6th action round, which is another not so good situation. So after kind of looking through those options, eliminating all of those as complete unmitigated disasters, then that leaves us with socialist governments. And our plan for this card all along has been to probably endure the event. And I think we're going to have to endure it. And the problem is we're not going to be able to put all the influence back because the absolute must do it to survive thing this turn is we must respond to the Middle East threat by getting a presence. And although we could get a presence by just taking over Israel, that would first of all use all 3 points of the socialist governments, and so nothing going back into Europe. And maybe much more importantly, it would leave us super vulnerable to an Arab-Israeli war. Not to mention, honestly, to being realigned in the Middle East on an action round 1 later on. That can work out as a Soviet strategy too, particularly when it would lead to a completely Soviet-controlled and no American presence kind of Middle East situation. So we're going to get it in Jordan, but we're going to watch him politic in West Germany over there, and then we're going to place influence back. We are going to get our Jordan presence. And then I guess we'll just put one of the points back into West Germany, which unfortunately, see if he doesn't immediately put a point into West Germany now that he can. So Suez Crisis for influence, and sure enough, okay, so he is building his Middle East domination. He is continuing to metastasize through Asia, where in places I have no access. And see, now he has been able to take advantage of West Germany no longer being controlled to get a kind of a freebie point in there. Now he touches France. And honestly, I don't have a lot of... The only way I could defend France at this point with the cards we have left would be to do a UN destalinization straight into it for 3, but then that leaves us completely open to blockade, which could annihilate West Germany. Plus, it doesn't really protect us from, we haven't seen de Gaulle yet, so it just end in even more disaster and it could end up in all sorts of disaster and tears. So that it seems like France is not looking good. And honestly, I think now is a time, because we're not under an existential threat, let's get Korean War out of our hand while we can and just get an obligation, get our space shot done. Okay, well, we got in, so we got 2 victory points, which, ironically, we're leading on the scoreboard. That won't last for very long, will it? It won't last through the Middle East scoring card coming up, I'll tell you that. Probably isn't going to last through the Europe scoring card either at the rate things are going. We are going to get Bo dominated in a lot of Bo places. All right, so let's see. He is giving us the Eastern European unrest. I can go ahead and pull some of his guys off. Let's just break his... I wouldn't always pull that guy out of Romania. I like to leave myself a concentrated spot for independent Reds later if it comes up. But on the other hand, that is a key. Dropping that point out means he no longer currently dominates Europe. So I feel like that's a better play right now. Now, I mean, he may just put all these back, but he'll probably put at least some of them somewhere else. Let's see what he does. All right. Okay, so that is a bunch of naughty things he's done. So he has now polluted France. He continues his march toward Thailand through Asia, which means we really need to get on the march toward Thailand, because if you get to one more tempo ahead of us, he will beat us to Thailand. And he has solidified control of Pakistan now that he controls Iran, which might also explain the Iran things. The Iran supports Pakistan against a Indo-Pakistan coup later, so that makes it, he's just hedging his bets to keep me out of Asia while rapidly building, frankly, what looks like it might be an Asian domination engine at the rate he's going. So I absolutely must go into Malaysia this turn to get next to Thailand. And if I do it with Vietnam revolts, we all know that he'll get to Thailand anyway. So this is the time we play UN intervention. Destalinization we will hold till next turn, or if he plays the blockade card. But he has played containment. Okay, so he's mitigating containment, which gives me +1 to every card for the rest of the turn. He's playing at the end of his turn. He is forcing my hand in Thailand, which, he could be thinking maybe I have some yucky card to play now that won't help. And so he is grabbing even more Thailand ground. And now he's gone straight on into Algeria, claiming it before I can even get touching it. So that was a grunter. So our play is now fairly obvious and certain, and at least 2 points of this are going into Thailand. In fact, I think we need to put 3 so that he can't flip it with the China card. He gets his 2 points into Vietnam, and that is the situation. So, and then yes, it's getting a little sadistic, but hey, this is good stuff. We've had plenty of good learning and teaching moments in this game, and we've gotten to watch some brilliant play. So we're going to keep trying to survive. And if he beats me in 2 turns, I don't think I've ever lost on turn 2 before, other than maybe by DEF CON. I don't think I've ever lost. Is it possible to get 20 points by turn 2? Probably not. So, but if he beats me real quick, we'll just have a rematch. All right, so let's look at our turn 2 hand, and I will say that this is at least somewhat better in that it's not that we didn't get any more utterly grotesque events. Now, it's not any better in the sense that we didn't get a lot of ops. We did get one good honking bruiser op in the form of NATO. We got Captured Nazi Scientists, which is a fantastic event that we will definitely be playing for the event. And Truman Doctrine could be useful. Honestly, I feel like my position in Europe is so grim right now that we may not have a chance to use it for full effect. NORAD, we're going to almost certainly have to play for ops. We only even have 2 in Canada. It's a great event when you can get it, but I just don't have the ops to give up a 3-op card. Cambridge 5, we want to make sure we've used European scoring, gotten it out of our hand before we play Cambridge 5. Other than that, it's a free no-op play. And for motion resolution, let's hold our judgment on for motion resolution in abeyance till we see how the turn goes, because Asia is shaping up to be a 3-3 battleground situation, most likely. And there are ways, that would be the situation in which a for motion resolution and control of Taiwan would make us dominate Asia, which honestly we could use a domination of some of some early war battleground region. So we might actually play that for the, this could shape up to be do that for the event. Destabilization, of course, is either going to the blockade or being saved till next turn to go to the space program. European scoring. So right at this little moment, we don't lose domination of Europe. Although, honestly, I don't think we would. He's not likely to do anything on action round 1 that suddenly establishes domination of Europe, because he's so far ahead in Europe that I think he's going to want to take his coup and lock me out of getting battlegrounds back in the Middle East, for example. So I predict he's going to take a coup in presumably Panama. So I think I can get away with a captured Nazi scientist headline, and then we'll see, because there's always a possibility that we actually play for Europe depending on how things go. So captured Nazi scientist for headline. Oh, and he is CIAing. Okay, well, this is interesting. He has headlined CIA. So that means actually our play of Fidel actually did, it did hurt. So let's just look at his hand. He's got 2 big bruiser cards, and he's got Asian scoring. He's got the Indo-Paki, so we're never going to get it. Special relationship is going to be a freebie for him, it looks like. And independent reds. Yes, now he's got independent reds. I wonder if it was his hold card from last turn, thus explaining some of the other things he did. But, it made sense what he did one way or the other. So the thing is, our play of Fidel, this... If you're ever a U.S. player and you're trying to figure out, well, should I space Fidel or play Fidel? Well, this is the kind of situation when Fidel kind of hurts him, because it did make this CIA card a serious liability for him. Now, mind you, him being in Algeria also exposed him to that, but he probably wouldn't have gone into Algeria if he didn't already have guys in Cuba. Because once you've kind of breached the new battlegrounds of the Soviets, well, then you're vulnerable to CIA. Normally, you wouldn't headline CIA because I might headline Duck and Cover, and then, he would lose if I headline Duck and Cover. But he knows Duck and Cover is out because he played it last turn, so he can actually do it in headline, see what I do, and then pick which of his cards he's going to play next. So this actually is better, but it does mean that we get to see his whole hand, which is nice. It is great to see his whole hand for planning purposes. Now, in some ways, it's a bit of a horror because he's got a fairly good hand. He's got 2 bonking bruisers in his 4 ops cards. and he controls the important war, Indo-Pakistani War. And it does mean that this is going to be a big fat turnabout Asia. So at least we see that coming, right? We don't have to wonder, is a big turn of fighting for Asia coming or not? Because we know it's coming. So that's good. And so what are we going to do with CIA created? Well, I think I'll go ahead and get a military op by cooing something, and it might let me back in somewhere that's interesting. So let's take a coup. I'm going to go with Egypt just because if I even get in only little one guy and he squishes it up, it actually helps me when Sadat comes later. At this point, it seems like it's the most, I mean, it's just a 1-point coup, and it most likely won't amount to very much. But you never know. Sometimes you get your 6 and you get something cool. And if I was going to get a 1-pointer, I think I would, at this point, want it to right now be in Egypt. So here we go. Nothing. So we got, one of the mini rolls that didn't do anything for us. That's fine. We do get 1 military op, which is 1 more than 0, and that's good. And let's see what he does. Okay, special relationship. While that's a good card for him to get out of his hand early, while the getting rid of is good, because I don't have 5 in the UK, so the event is ignored. All right, and he is going to go ahead and grab France, while the grabbing of France is good. All right, and that, having seen he has the Asian card, and now he's grabbed France, that gives me the last piece of information I need to know that it is time to get Europe the hell out of our hand. Because fortunately, we did manage to tink his point out of Romania, and so now we will see the importance of that, in that he does not own a non-battleground in Europe, even though he outnumbers me 3-1 in battlegrounds. And so I can dispose of the Europe card, quote-unquote, safely. At least I just give him the 2 points for his 3-1 domination, his 3-1 outnumbering me, but he doesn't get the domination, and the European scoring card is retired. Okay, here comes a bonker. Here comes a bonker. Red Scare Purge. Oh, look at that. That's a beautiful play. I mean, obviously, he is playing into a great board position. I could make a beautiful play if I had that board position in that hand. But this is maybe a particularly beautiful play that is worthy of comment. So what he's done, he used a 4-ops, and he has filled Asia to the point of dominating it, because now he outnumbers me 3-2 in battlegrounds. But then in creating the Asian domination, he then spoinkled, to coin a word, that's a technical term, spoinkled. He spoinkled 1 little point into the Saharan states. And see, that would normally be just a gimme for me for a coup. It would let me into Africa there, and I would get ops, which I usually need, and I still kind of need this turn. And, it would create this huge coup back and forth thing that would normally be a bad place for the Soviet player to go right now, except that this is like the situation in chess where the knight forks the king and the queen, or actually it's not really, it's more like when the knight forks the queen and the rook, because it's not an existential, not a truly existential threat like, a DEFCON 1 thing would be. It's that I have to choose between, if I take a coup in the Saharan states, which would normally be, I would just punish him by pounding him. I would just take the Cambridge 5 and coup the Saharan states into the next century. But then he dominates Asia, and he would immediately play that card and get 5 points, and that would be really sad, because we know he's even, it's not even he's threatening it and we're wondering if he's holding the card. We know he's got the card. We know he's got the Asian scoring card. So I can't take a coup and play, I can't use part of a coup to play some influence and part of a card to, I can't use NATO to put 3 points in Japan or something and 1 point to take a coup with. That would be That would be an interesting variant, but I can't do it. So he has created a beautiful, beautiful fork situation, a double threat to which I cannot respond to both threats. Like, I just can't, I'm not allowed to take a coup and place influence, but I need to do both, so I can only do one. And I am certainly going to adjust. So the African thing is a positional threat, which means it's a longer term threat. Africa isn't in the scoring deck right now. Plus, what he's threatening to gain is Nigeria. Well, I guess he's going to gain Nigeria, but there's more Africa. There's still a chance to not get nothing in Africa for us. Meanwhile, the Asian threat is right now. He's got domination right now. He's got the scoring card in his hand right now. So that's the one we're going to have to respond to. And we're going to just use 3 ops, and we're going to tie him in total countries so that he doesn't dominate. So he could score for 1 point right now, but he cannot score for more than that. And one reason, I don't want to go into Japan. I know he's got US-Japan, and I know he kind of wants to use that 4 ops. He could space that card, but 4 ops is going to be tempting. But I certainly don't want to relieve him of the obligation to give me 3 extra points in Japan. So it's, he's got a little bit of tension in his hand because he's holding Asian scoring and US-Japan. He wants to score Asia before he plays the US-Japan card, obviously. So I'm not going to relieve him of that obligation that I know he has. All right, independent Reds, he is okay. So look at that. He continues to tighten the vice. He has restored his domination with 1 point, and then with the other point, he continues to expand into Africa. So he took his Nigeria before I have a chance to do anything about it. Now, I can still coup Saharan states later. This does mean, well, I'm never going to have to worry about places to take non-battleground coups anymore. I shouldn't be getting op-dominated, as it were, in the end-of-turn military ops thing from here on out. So that's at least one little positive piece of news. But meanwhile, he's got this huge thing in Asia, and he hasn't even had to use decolonization or destalinisation to do it. In fact, it's kind of implies that he doesn't hold decolonization. I mean, the fact that he's been making these moves, it occurs to me he probably... Oh, wait, I know he doesn't have decolonization because I know what his hand is. Ha, 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 that's so funny. That is what happens when you play, asynchronous games. You sometimes forget the things that you knew at the beginning of the turn, but we need to remember the things at the beginning of the turn. And if I always remembered to go back and check the knowledge and refresh my memory with all the things that I definitely knew at the beginning of the turn, then I would have a higher rating. So meanwhile, independent Reds is going to give us the 2 points in Romania. Too bad it wasn't 3, but I would much rather have 2 points in Romania and not have him having scored domination in Europe. And so that was what turned out, in fact, was the choice. And so I'm happy with how we ran that baby. All right, so I accidentally lost the move where I played NATO, but what I did was I went ahead and put 3 into Taiwan and the extra 1 into Japan because I want to make him feel threatened there about a little. So basically, I needed to take his domination away. And to do that, I need another country. So the only 2 countries left to me, I could have gone smashing in with the 4 card into Laos, Cambodia. But given that I am holding Formosan resolution, and so holding Taiwan, I always do that. Holding Taiwan possibly could give me domination of Asia either now or later. And keep in mind, Asia's coming now, so that means it could reshuffle into the deck as soon as next turn. That Taiwan is a better move for me, and it creates a little bit of threat for him. And I went ahead and put the extra point in Japan just so that I could, in theory, so if he doesn't respond to this, I'm kind of making a counter threat to the fact that I know, and he knows I know, and he knows I know that he knows I know that he's got the Asian card and the Japan card. I went in and popped 1 point into Japan so that I could fill up Japan with one of my little stupid 2 cards. I guess if he's really astute, which he is actually very astute, he might even know that means I only have a 2 card left, so that I could fill Japan, and then he'd be staring down a potentially dominated Japan. That might have been an unnecessary move. Maybe I should have put that point into, Costa Rica or West Germany, but I did not. I went ahead and pressed it. Okay, and here's the Asian card. So he gets his point because we don't own Japan yet, and we get finally an action round in which we can quote-unquote do what we want. And so here's the Cambridge 5, which is now a free play. And I'm going to put a point of it into West Germany and a point into Costa Rica. So the point in Costa Rica makes it so that if he coups Panama and knocks me out, I can get back in. Or if he coups Panama and gets in at 1, then I can play 3 back in. So it dramatically increases my chances of holding Panama, and it gives me a little bit of access to the nearby countries. His event goes off for nothing because we don't have a scorecard. And yes, here is US-Japan right after the Japan doesn't matter as much anymore. And he is, okay, so now that he's breached non-battlegrounds, he's just going to breach non-battlegrounds everywhere. He's overprotected France, so I can't, do some kind of end of turn Truman wipeout thing, where I could, in theory, pay the armed price to put one in to France, breaking his control on action round 6, and the next turn I could headline Truman Doctrine. He didn't want any of that business. This wouldn't be I don't have the right hand to be able to do that properly because I want to hold destalinisation anyway, but he's taken that off the table. And he's gone ahead and protected Cuba from realignment because the only reason not to do that is if it would give me a way to coup non-battlegrounds, but I already had ways to coup non-battlegrounds. And he's poking his poker out into whatever that is, Cameroon. And it's just a sweep through Africa, and that's going to have to be the sweep too far. We're going to have to do something about that. I don't see a lot of use for Truman Doctrine right now. I always hate to see it go without creating great, violence against him. I would have liked to take over Romania and stuff, but that's Cameroon is a much bigger threat. I need to coup that bad boy out and hope that it works. So here's a coup. Okay, well, we got our second op, so we got our ops, and of course he'll probably coup back because he doesn't have any ops. But we got a nice solid roll, so we're in at 3 in Cameroon. And that does put the shoe back on the other foot, meaning that now he's threatened that we're getting access to Zaire. So, yeah, sure enough, Arab-Israeli war for a coup rather than a war. So he's going to get his 2 ops. So yeah, that was, and it goes to even. It goes to nothing. Well, so it let that kind of actually end. It's funny when it goes directly to 0. It's sort of an unexpected end to what you thought was going to be a coup back and forth war. And by the way, I probably would have felt like I had to coup him back with Formosan resolution if he'd gotten back in, even though I kind of want to play for him. That would have been I had to think about that. Would I have, when Formosan resolution establishes domination, or would I have let him just spooge his way all the way through Africa without even using decolonization? Eek! It would have been a horrible choice in what has been, by the way, a pretty horrible early war so far. But we knocked him out. Now, he did manage he got his 2 military ops, so we're not getting any points from military ops. So he fulfilled his obligation while doing a strategic thing. But it does mean that we are free in our last round to go ahead and play Formosan resolution for the event, establishing domination of Asia for the nonce. As long as we don't play the China card, then that is some stuff. Okay, so here we are. And we go to turn 3. DEFCON goes to 3. Wah, wah, wah. And we take a look at our hand. Okay, so we got all the scribbly little cards before the reshuffle, and then after the reshuffle, we get some bonkers. That's nice. Okay, well, at the beginning of turn 3, it is, of course, time for homework. So what would you headline next? And what would your quote-unquote plan be for the turn? I have one other piece of information to give you, which is, of course, what cards we now know he's having. I will save you the trouble of counting them out. He has got the Marshall Plan. He has got De Gaulle. He has got Warsaw Pact. He's got the Indo-Pakistani War still, that he saved from last turn, and he has got the 5-year plan. So that's what he's got. Our cards are mysteries, as are his other cards. So think about what you do. I mean, I know the board position looks a little grim. It's good, a positional player did a good job playing positionally there. It's great. Just because he had good luck doesn't mean he didn't do a good job taking maximum advantage of his good luck. And just because we had bad luck, of course, doesn't mean that we didn't, mitigate the crap out of some cards there, okay? So let's just think about this, and why don't you tell me in comments what you think should be Mr. Headline Card, what should be our plan going forward to the turn, how are we going to do it for blockade, what are we going to do about UN intervention, defectors, all those great, awesome items. And I will see you next time on Twilight Struggle. Play the experts.